Hello all, my name is Kaltrop, and this is my Forge, where I create characters for role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, and more. Every week I release a new episode where we go through the creation process of characters of all races and all classes, and I hope to become better and better at this process as we go. Today you are joining me in the creation of a Dwarf Barbarian named Nug. I'm creating Nug using details from Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, but feel free to adapt this character to whatever role-playing game that you favor. Let's cover some basic information about Nug. He is a dwarf, as established, but more specifically, he is a mountain dwarf with darker skin. He's about 4 feet tall, has red hair, which is mainly referring to his beard, as he is mostly bald on the top of his head. He's got blue eyes and is a very strong dwarf who lacks a lot of intelligence. Nug belongs to the alignment of chaotic neutral, as he kind of does his own thing with no regard for the law or others. He's socially inept, but mainly because he doesn't spend much time around people. More about this is coming in Nug's backstory. When Nug makes bonds with others, that bond lasts a lifetime. In other words, he's slow to trust, but once he does trust you, you're his family. Before we dig into Nug's backstory that will explain in part why he is the way that he is, I'm going to take a quick break and acknowledge the sponsor of this episode. Oh, hello. Actually, I don't have any sponsors yet, but this is where the advertisement would go if I did have a sponsor. So for now, let's listen to a few seconds of elevator music until we're ready for the next part of the episode. Alright, now let's get into Nug's backstory. This backstory is set on the Sword Coast in D&D, but could easily be adapted to other games and locations if necessary. Nug was born with the name Brynor. His clan lived in the Eastern Cloud Peaks. Right after Brynor's birth, his family was banished from the clan, and they retreated to the Snakewood at the base of Cloud Peaks. Brynor was never told why they got banished, but for some reason his parents always blamed him for it. They raised Brynor until he was about 10 years old, when he had the most basic of communication skills, and then decided to abandon him in the heart of the Snakewood. While they attempted this, his parents were killed by a sleuth of black bears. Brynor feared for his life, but the bears decided to take him in as their own. Brynor took his father's armor and warhammer, figuring that over time he could probably learn how to use them. The bears taught him how to swim, which a lot of dwarves can't do, and how to survive in the wild. He used the warhammer to provide food for the bears, trying to further immerse himself in their world. While he lived with the creatures of the wild, he often wondered what life with other dwarves would be like. This interest started when the bears and Brynor were traveling up the peaks, and from a distance, he saw the clan from which his family was banished. Finally, around age 50, Brynor tried to rejoin them, but after they learned of his origins, they banished him again, and this time stripped him of his dwarven name. He then decided that he would be called Nug, as it is much easier to say than Brynor anyway. For the next 25 years, Nug stayed with the bears. Sometimes, travelers would come through the Snakewood, but Nug didn't have much luck in interacting with them, until he learned that it was easy to exchange fresh meat for conversation. The travelers taught Nug better communication skills, mainly in the common language, but some dwarvish along the way. They would teach him about various weapons as well. The travelers told wondrous stories about their adventures near and far. Nug doesn't know much about the world outside of the Cloud Peaks and Snakewood, but he is ready to go on adventures, learn new things, and figure out if there is anything special that he can do with his life. I purposefully left the ending of Nug's backstory a bit open-ended because it would help my DM come up with a story of how all the adventurers in my party would meet each other, but he could probably have a more specific motive from his backstory, like revenge on the clan who banished him twice, or maybe understanding why his family was banished because of him in the first place. Or it could even be that the Snakewood is running out of natural food sources and he needs to go find alternate sources, but I decided that he just kind of wanted to adventure and do something with his life, because that's kind of the beauty of character creation. The possibilities are many, but I chose this one because he's kind of a simple creature, so I wanted the ending of his backstory to be pretty simple as well. Now that we know Nug a bit better, we can get down to the details of his character that will determine how he is used in gameplay. We can already gather that Nug is basically a tank. His strength is going to be his highest ability score, probably followed by Constitution, then Dexterity, then Wisdom, then Charisma, leaving Intelligence for last. Being raised by bears puts him at a disadvantage in any situations where he needs to be crafty or charismatic when interacting with people. But if a task requires strength, then he's your guy. Being a dwarf, he has some natural dwarf characteristics like dwarven resilience, helping him with poisonous encounters, and night vision to help him with perception at nighttime, with the added strength bonuses that come from being a mountain dwarf. He also has some rage bonuses that he can use scarcely as he is a barbarian. I would put his skill proficiencies in animal handling and survival given his background. The problem with survival is that it's an intelligence-based skill. Or actually, I'm not sure if it's intelligence or wisdom, but either way, he's got a disadvantage. But I was able to work it out with my DM to give my survival skill a boost, and take the points from other skills that Nug would not be good at, in alignment with his backstory. So if your DM doesn't let you do that, then you can still put that proficiency bonus there and get that +1 on the skill at least. Nug's ideal is that others become his family not by blood but by choice, and that he always protects his family. His bond is that he will always be more comfortable in the woods and around wildlife, especially bears, than he will around people and civilization. His flaws are his lack of social skills, his ravenous appetite which gets him into trouble, and because he spent so much time with bears, he acts like them in that he will fight back fiercely if he's provoked, but otherwise remains pretty docile. The weapon that he wields at first is only his father's warhammer, and his father's armor is all he wears as well. That stuff can be built on as the story goes, but that's just what he leaves his backstory with, and only that. I think that pretty well wraps up the character creation process for Nug, the Dwarf Barbarian. If you enjoyed being creative with me, and I hope you did, I hope that you subscribe so that you can listen each week as I take on a new character workshop. Honestly, this is my favorite part of role-playing games, the character creation experience, and I want to get better at it. So if you have any suggestions for me, or if you have any races and classes that you would like me to cover next, please let me know by emailing me at kaltropsforge@gmail.com. That's KALTROPSFORGE@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you next time in the Forge.